Hi, this is John from Western Maine Defensive Tactics again, here to continue my little series on Bowie knives. We're going to talk about double guards today. Now, why would you want a double guard on your knife? I think double guards should be standard equipment on about any heavy use or survival knife, because in a survival situation, or even if you're just back in the woods hunting or backpacking or whatever, you can ill afford having a serious injury to your hands with a knife, because you can't afford to have your primary hand, which is probably what you're using on your knife, to get seriously injured, both for the risk of reduction in capability and for the risk of infection. Guards help you when you're tired. They help you when your hand is fatigued, when you're cold, and all that kind of stuff. They cover you when you're a little not at 100% and can cover yourself. Double guards get a lot of flack today because in field knife use, because knives kind of like this or of this general style have come into vogue for field use, and they can be very good. Knives with a good contoured handle that generally keep your hand from sliding forward on the blade because of the handle, because of the handle design is good. I like knives like this, but for my money, I want a double guard because a well-designed double guard doesn't really get in your way for field use, and it gives you advantages that this knife handle does not have. Now, a lot of people have, again, negative opinions about double guard because of negative experience with overly large, overly thick, just huge double guards. This is a reproduction of the Ames 1849 rifleman's knife that you've seen in a couple of videos now. It's one knife I used to use quite a bit. When I first got it, it had about a 4.25 inch span of guard, which is pretty big. About an inch wide, a little bit over 1/4 inch thick. And I trimmed it down to do what I wanted it to do, and also to reduce the weight, because it had probably 3 ounces of extra weight there that I really didn't need to lug around. But I made it do what I wanted it to do, and most of the time, what I want a double guard to do is allow me to put my finger up over it and hook around onto the ricasso, so I can do all the fine work, whittling and carving and stuff that people say is difficult to do with a big knife. That's how I use my big knife. Another advantage of that little system is generally, on most knives, or the knives I make myself anyway, when I hook my finger over it, over the guard and onto ricasso, I'm either very close to or right on top of the point of balance, which makes that knife handle all the better. Again, for close-up utility work and things like that. Another thing I'll point out about guards, if you look at some of the original Sheffield buoys, you'll notice they have kind of a dog bone or let's say a concavity here, a depression here, and then sometimes they widen back out or they narrow down. I'm not saying that this is what the original purpose was, because I haven't examined enough knives to know, but I think it's kind of peculiar that it kind of works real well for that particular technique, that particular idea. Again, we don't reinvent the wheel. We just rediscover things that people knew before us. If you want an example of that sort of guard, look in Norm Flaterman's book, Bowie Knife Unsheathing the American Legend. I think it's page 55, 213, 359, or 358, and they're all throughout the book. Once you learn to spot them, you'll see them. You won't see good head-on shots of knives like this, but you'll see knives with what look like little depressions here, and that's just something that kind of caught my eye about it when I was looking through that book. Excellent book, by the way. Well, we've talked about some bad guards. Let's talk about good guards. I like a guard that's not overly long, not too long. I run mine 3 plus or minus 1/4 inch or so, 3 inches or so wide. That'll vary with the length of the blade, the weight of the blade, how you use your knife. I like 2 7/8, 3 1/4, something like that, depending on knives. That varies quite a bit with me. I like a contour like this, or perhaps a dog bone or bow tie, whatever you're going to say, again, to hook that finger over. And also of a tough, stiff material, preferably steel. I like steel. You'll see why in a minute. But brass is always a good material. Bronze, wrought iron, a good, stiff, tough material. I would avoid cast zinc and pot metal, stuff like that. Also, don't get a guard that is overly thin. I wouldn't put this on, 16th inch thick brass, easily bent on a knife as a guard, and really have a serious for serious purposes. Maybe on a small hunting knife, but never on a heavy noose Bowie knife or anything like that. 3/16, an 1/8 inch anyway, 3/16, quarter of an inch, you're doing well. Anything beyond a quarter of an inch, in my opinion, is you're adding mass for no reason, unless you're starting out with a 5/16 inch thickness and then tapering it out to, to get a particular contour or something like that. That's fine, but putting a 5/16 slab of brass, boop, knocking a slot in it and calling that a guard, okay, do a little bit more work there and make it work for you. Make it a little bit more graceful. Just because it's a massive guard doesn't mean it's a good guard. You're adding a lot of weight beyond what is functional, beyond what you really need. And not too thick, not too thin. Good, tough materials. Now, speaking of tough materials, you'll find quite a few decent-sized knives running around out there today that have injection molded handles. Okay, that's fine. The problem I have with some of these, not all, is they're either an injection molded, say, craton or plastic, or they're a hard plastic underneath with a rubber or craton over the top. Also fine. Good grip. The guard will protect you from sliding forward on the blade. The problem I have with those is those materials can be sheared by another blade or broken by a blunt object, that sort of thing. They'll protect you from the blade most of the time going forward, but something coming in as a weapon, it is very likely to get through, and I don't have a lot of confidence in it because there's no metal reinforcing it. It's just a plastic or a rubber. That's something to be aware of. Right along with that subject, we'll talk about combat guards. Now, years ago, back in the 90s, Master at Arms James Keating from Combat Technologies introduced a series of videos to the world called ABC, American Blade Concepts, that dealt with the Bowie knife. And in that material, in those videos, he talked about his Crissata. This is a Jim Keating Crissata trainer. And he talks quite a bit in I believe it's the first video, but it's in a lot of the videos throughout there about blade catching with a Spanish notch and disarming, blade catching with the quillions here, and also the quillion that goes through the center of the blade and makes this an actual Crissata, the cross. And he took quite a lot, and probably is still taking quite a lot of criticism, undeserved criticism, from people who don't know any better, saying that sort of thing will get your hand cut off, that he didn't know what he was talking about, that it's an unrealistic technique, or that he made it up. Well, Mr. King put a lot of development into his knife, but I would say the concepts that he included aren't made up. They've been pretty solid concepts in fencing for a long time. And also, I've worked with Mr. Keating and also with Pete Couts of Alliance Martial Arts, and they both can disarm me with a blade. With one like this, they'll teach you the basics, and once you understand the underlying concepts, it's not that hard to do. You just have to practice it. It's like any other tool in a fight or a martial art, like a wrist lock or an arm bar or anything else that is an individual skill that you could learn and incorporate into a greater fight. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard. People are going to criticize about whatever you do. It's best not to listen to a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about. And I assure you, Mr. Keating does. Mr. Couch does. I can't recommend them highly enough. But moving along. Speaking of combat guards, this is my little version of a combat guard. You've seen this blade before. This is my, one of my little field buoys. And since I don't engage in Bowie knife fights very often now, I like a buoy to use in the woods because I live in Maine, a rural environment, and I'm out in the woods a lot. I do a lot of chopping, a lot of carving, things like that, making things. And I like a knife to use in the woods. But I also thought that I don't want to lose the capability that this type of guard gives me. But I also don't want it in my way when I'm doing my field work, like this kind of guard will be. And I value the hand protection. So if you notice on this knife and the others, I have 2 threaded holes that I put in the guard that allow the attachment of this combat guard when you want it. I can take it off when I want to do field work, and usually at night I slap this puppy on. I really like this idea, this concept for when I travel to places that I can't have my handgun with me for reasons of stupid legalities and foolish laws. I like this knife because, like Jim Keating's Crissata, when I put it beside my bed at night, it stands right up there and I can grab it easy. And I've got an added advantage with against other weapons. Now, I'm not one of these people that think I'm going to walk out in the street and get into a Bowie knife versus Bowie knife fight. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, my knife versus tire iron versus stick or club or whatever people happen to be dragging around these days, that could happen. Knife versus knife, maybe not. But that's just something to bear in mind, that the skill to use these guards isn't unobtainable by you, because if I could learn it, you can learn it too. And Mr. Keating can easily teach you. Mr. Kaus can pretty easily teach you. You can learn this. It's not impossible. It's not the BS technique that some people will still say it is. And to me, it's Mr. Keating's so well established in the Bowie knife realm, among many others, that it boggles my mind that people still criticize. But hey, it is what it is. But remember, double guards are a good thing. They may or may not be your cup of tea. Originally, way back when, I was a single guard kind of guy. I liked a single guard, but not a double guard. But then I learned some things about making different guards and shaping guards, and I like that upper guard now. It really is an advantage because it protects you either way, and it provides a good leverage point for carving and all sorts of stuff. Remember, good solid material, not too thick, not too thin, not too heavy, not too long. And I can't tell you how long your guard should be because your hand's a lot different from mine. Your purposes are a lot different from mine. Choose a guard that feels right to you and that works for you. And if you're getting a knife made and you don't really know what you want, have it a little bit big because you can always cut it down. If it's too small, it's really hard to add things to it. And don't be afraid to modify, your factory knives to make them work for you. That's what I did with this one, and it turned out really sweet. And I hope that sheds a little bit more light on some guards, or the use of guards and stuff like that. Again, I'm not going to show you the points of bind and all that stuff. You need to look up Mr. Keating and study with him and get it from the original source and form your own opinion on that. You're not going to learn that from me on YouTube, or probably from anybody else on YouTube. But go forward. Use this information to choose yourself a good Bowie knife, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.